Welcome to another episode of the For Nature podcast. Today, we're excited to have Melissa Walsh with us. Dr. Melissa Walsh is the Director of Blue Finance and Scaling at the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance, ORRAA. ORRAA is a multi-sector collaboration connecting the finance and insurance sectors, governments, multilateral organizations, civil society, local partners to pioneer finance and insurance products that incentivize investment in coastal and ocean resilience and through nature-based solutions. Now, the ocean's been doing a great job for us, and it's great to have Melissa Walsh working to help bring finance and financial solutions to the ocean space. Melissa is considered a leading global expert in ocean finance and the blue economy. She has 24 years of experience in coral reef science management and conservation finance, working throughout Australia, Asia Pacific. Prior to ORRAA, she was the head of the ocean finance at the Minderoo Foundation, where we were able to collaborate as well, and Director of Ocean Finance Initiative for the Asian Development Bank, where she initiated some quite ambitious approaches to ocean finance. We are thrilled to have Melissa here, and we dive into a lot of questions about ocean finance, and enjoy.
We are delighted to have Melissa Walsh with us today. So, Melissa, just to kind of get us started off, we would love to hear a little bit about kind of what really inspired you and kind of sparked your transition from more kind of the science side, coral reef science, into this world of ocean finance and why marine conservation finance attracted you and kind of pulled you over to the other side.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks so much for having me. It's really a pleasure to be here. And I guess at first glance, if you look at my background, it might seem like an odd transition, but I promise these things are connected. I started off in coral reef biogeochemistry, so very much the hard sciences, studying coral reefs and how they respond to different nutrients and stressors and how we could protect them. But then on that journey, I started working with local communities in Hawaii and how to protect their reefs. And I loved working with them. And I loved the idea that by empowering local communities, we could create situations and systems where there was resilience and sustainability baked in. But we kept hitting the same issue in these projects that I was involved in, the same issue over and over again, which was that to be successful, not only did these communities need the science and the partnership, but they also needed money. And we kept hitting that wall. And so over time, I felt like the science was pretty clear on how to act. And the partners and stakeholders were telling us these interesting and innovative ways to manage their resources, but we didn't have enough money to scale the work and really solve the challenges at hand. And so it really pulled me in the direction of understanding how to unlock capital and move it in a way from it being this mainstream capital market and then a little bit of money through philanthropy on the side to fund marine conservation. But I wanted to see a systematic transformation so that we could invest money into a way that would then create systems and incentives for communities and oceans to thrive. And so I sort of went on this journey to study marine conservation finance. And yeah, I've been in love with this field ever since. And I guess the last thing I'd say on it is, in with some of my original studies in the field of chemistry, we learned about catalysts. And a catalyst doesn't do anything on its own, but within a system, it makes change happen faster. And that's something that I've brought with me from science to finance is that we need catalysts. And that helps us to unlock momentum and connect actors and make the system work at scale. So yeah, that's a little bit about my journey to being where I am now.
That's great. Thank you. That's such a wonderful story of just realizing what the actual roadblocks were into trying to get where you were hoping in terms of working with these communities and these coral reefs. you were mentioning how, bringing this idea of a catalyst and bringing some of these tools and skills over from the science side, what were some of the biggest challenges you found? I'm just thinking about interdisciplinary work and people, science and finance, really wanting to talk and share and work together and collaborate and partner. What were some of the hardest things or the surprises or things you found yourself having to learn or maybe pivot or shift a little bit as you were going kind of from one sort of field to another?
Yeah. It's a good question, Kim. I mean, what I really felt, well, there was two things that come to mind. One is trust and one is just language. So I think very specifically where I was coming from, we were working with several types of fishing communities. And I say types because people come to the ocean with all sorts of motivations, their own backgrounds, their cultures, their histories. And some of these were commercial fishers, and some of these were recreational fishers, and some were practicing long held cultural traditions around fishing. And there was a lack of trust between all of these groups, and then with those groups with scientists and conservationists and government. And so one of the first things was very simple, which was, well, it was not easy, but it was straightforward in that we needed to build trust and find common ground between these groups and helping them to understand that actually we all want the same thing, which is oceans that are healthy and thriving and supporting communities in the long term. But it's sometimes the language can be a barrier to building that trust and confidence. And something that I enjoy, but I think we don't have enough of in this world is being able to speak between these two different languages. And by that, I don't mean Native Hawaiian to English. I mean science to finance, understanding these technical jargony terms that happen in the finance and investment and business world are different than all the acronyms we use in government and multilateral world to the languages that communities use, and being able to understand the intention behind those words and then finding common language so that we could connect these stakeholders. That's kind of the secret sauce.
That's great. I think it's so true. It's so true, and something I've found with economics and science over the years as well. That that language helps build that trust.
Yeah, we use a lot of language in the work that we do. The language of finance can be very complicated. The language of science can be very complicated, and you know, so you know, what we know that the blue economy, we know that the oceans are not receiving anywhere near the same level of funding as a lot of land-based activities of conservation. And then there's been this new term, we talk about language, blue finance, that is being commonly used. So g help us bridge that communication gap. What does blue finance mean to you? Why is it an effective terminology? How can we, or should we be? How can we bring more money into blue economies and ocean finance?
Yeah, thanks, Dave. For me, blue finance is about building a system for money to flow to ocean solutions. So it's creating the rules, the tools, and the trust that are needed to grow a regenerative and sustainable blue economy. So, to break that down a little bit further, blue finance is not the same thing as funding or fundraising. I wish it was that simple, but I think there's this misconception that it's about going and putting your hand out and asking for money. It's really not about that. It's about system building. We are trying to create a capital market for the ocean. And so that includes a bunch of things like building regulations and the policy environment, about financial innovation. It's about mechanisms to understand and absorb risk. It's about education and awareness, helping people to understand these opportunities for ocean investment. There's a lot of creativity that's required to build pipelines of investments. All these entrepreneurs thinking about how to take an ocean idea and make it a business. And then it's these partnerships, like we talked about a minute ago, that are cross sector, and then it's actually executing the transaction. So it's quite a big, complex field. It's not new though. It's a subset. of what's happening in the broader green and nature sustainable finance realms, but it's helping us to have this focus on this subset of that for blue. And so it's about building in specific mechanisms, specific regulations, and partnerships that help that money to flow into the blue economy. Now, some people might say, why have it separate? Why have this blue finance separate from nature finance? And I hope we do ourselves out of a job. Eventually, finance, blue, green, turquoise, just be um, one big field. However, I just feel at this moment in history, blue is getting left behind. Green finance, by comparison, is absolutely mammoth. And it's actually, in some ways, easier and less risky. And so, if we don't force the focus on blue, the risk is that the capital will flow into the other parts of nature, which are green, and blue will continue to get left behind. So, a couple of examples of that. We need to make sure there's a focus on ocean conservation, creating sustainable seafood, which is fisheries and aquaculture, but it's also marine renewable energy, green ports and shipping, and tourism, and so on. And so, by us having this focus on the regenerative and sustainable blue economy, we think we can build the system and watch that capital flow in and support ocean health and resilience and be a springboard to sort of this integration of a larger nature finance sustainable development agenda.
I know you've done work for a range of organizations. Can you just take us through a little bit of that process and then take us to where you are now with ORRAA and tell us about ORRAA. What are you doing and how are you? Because you say we are doing this. I think you're referring to ORRAA and of course all of us. But tell us a bit more about what you're doing now and some of these initiatives. We'd love to hear.
Yeah, thank you. So I have worked in many different facets of the blue finance world. I've worked for government, I've been an academic, I've worked for private sector, and I've uh, worked for multilateral institutions. So one of the big springboards for me was working at the Asian Development Bank, where I worked on the ocean finance program there. The three of us, we worked together while I was in the Pacific, leading the Pacific Ocean Finance Program, a program that's still near and dear to my heart. And uh, from there and those experiences, it's really this multi-stakeholder effort that's required. So whether it's through a multilateral development bank, a UN agency, or a specific government to work for the Great Barrier Reef Marine Park Authority, what's really clear is that we have to work across these stakeholder collaborations for things to work. And that's brought me to where I'm at now, which is with ORRAA, the Ocean Risk and Resilience Action Alliance, and we are the only global multi stakeholder coalition, and we really exist to break down silos. And so we're connecting international finance and insurance with government, nonprofit, and stakeholders, particularly working on empowering the global south to pioneer investment solutions and scale nature based solutions. Our aim is by 2030 to activate at least 500 million of investment to build the resilience of 250 million climate vulnerable coastal people. How do we do this? We are a global alliance of over 100 members. We are a nonprofit, but we don't operate as some other nonprofits where it's just about a core staff. We really are a convener. We like to think about being the connective tissue to bring together the various actors that are needed for this blue finance space. And in my role there, I'm the director of Blue Finance and Scaling. And so I lead our work on developing these blue finance innovations and taking that to scale. Part of that at the moment is leading the Sea Change Impact Financing Facility, which we call SCIF for short. And that's an umbrella facility with several finance platforms and mechanisms within it that we're incubating and accelerating and launching out into the world. There's 7 platforms and instruments, which I can tell you a bit about more of them. They're all in various stages. But we work through partners to do that. So each one of those platforms, we've found experts. Most often they come from green finance, climate finance, sustainable finance, and they're taking a tool that's tested and proven. And then we do feasibility work to see if it could be applied to the blue space. And then from there, we do design work and launch new products. So it's about taking things that are proven in the green finance, climate finance space, applying them to blue and making sure we are unlocking the flow of capital to blue. And we do that through, partnerships and large alliances.
That's great to hear about all that work and the partnerships and cutting across groups and sectors. And so something I wanted to ask that kind of relates to a couple of the different points you made is, really thinking about system building and how you create the systemic change. And you were mentioning, this idea of creating a capital market for the ocean and, how you try to bring sectors together and you sort of connect finance with government and civil society. And I'm curious how the sort of growth and evolution of natural capital accounts and ocean accounts in a number of places, what you see the role of that and how you see that helping to really systematize at a very, national level how countries and governments how they count growth and development, and it's really a very systemic change, and what you see as the potential and opportunities there for that to um, not just incentivize greater investment, but um, reduce incentives for damage and degradation and those activities that are creating the need for that financing in the first place.
Yeah, information is power, isn't it? And data is power. And when you look at financial markets, what makes money move is data and confidence in data. And it's pretty simple that we kind of take it for granted, but when you're going to for yourself, maybe buying a home or an investment, you're looking at lots of data to help inform and make that decision. And the same thing is true when we're looking at ocean investments. We need data. And one thing that has been clear over the last several years is that we need better ways to measure the both negative and positive impacts we're making on the ocean. And Global Ocean Accounts Partnership and the National Ocean Account, one way that we can do that. It's one way to empower government decision makers to better understand their systems and better understand how decisions they make are going to impact ocean assets and the flow of capital from the ocean in the future. But what I would say is that we are, as an alliance, or often as I mentioned, we're connective tissue. We try to figure out where are the gaps that we can fill. And we heard a very loud and clear gap from our members, which was we don't have global consensus on how we're measuring impact in the ocean. There's a proliferation of systems out there for how to measure impact. And we hear from the investment and finance and insurance members and partners that we have that they want clear numbers. They want to have zero risk of being accused of greenwashing or blue washing. They want to know which numbers do I measure and can I have confidence in those numbers. And then we hear from project developers and governments, we're not quite sure which system to use. There's lots of systems out there. And so we've joined forces this year with the Nature Positive Initiative in PI and the World Economic Forum, the WEF, to build global consensus on ocean positive metrics. And that's a project that we kicked off in June at the Blue Economy and Finance Forum in Monaco. And it's underway. And we're not creating a new system of measurement, but we've just completed our landscape assessment. And we've found that there's at least 82 systems out there for measuring ocean impacts. And our work now is to not pick between them, but to help build a cohesive, systematic framework of that. And so if you're a government, then you can be pointed to the system that is appropriate for you. And if you're an investor, you know where to go. And that we're trying to find some commonality, some common metrics that underlie all these systems. And so that it's more some more consensus in the market to build that confidence and trust. And we think that will help unlock flows of money, not just individually at the project size or deal size, but also for the larger governments and multinational investments. And that's work that's underway. And we hope to have at least some draft work around that consensus building statement by the end of 2025.
Oh, I see. And is that one of the main reasons why you're mentioning how green finance in many ways is sort of easier and less risky? Is it this challenge of defining and measuring impact in the ocean that's part of the reason?
It's definitely part of the reason. You have these really complex systems where, first of all, there's very little ownership in the coastal waters, still depending on your country and the jurisdiction, but often it's unclear who owns the water. And then you have people that are upstream working on a piece of farm property near a river with pollutants into the ocean. You've got maybe people coming from north or south to fish in these waters. It's very complex about which stakeholders are interacting with the water. And so one, attributing cause and what's happened, what action you're doing is leading to which impact is hard. That's part of the risk. The other risk is that some of these blue finance investment opportunities, they're an emerging sector, so they might be newer and have had less time to grow. They might be more in this small business space and entrepreneurial space, and they might need a little bit of time to prove that they work. And for that reason, there's another solution that we're supporting through partners, and that's Nautilus, the Blue Guarantee Company. And that's providing guarantees to de-risk investment in ocean projects. Now, this has been successful. There is a green guarantee company, which has been successful in that space, and we're bringing that to Blue now. A guarantee is a promise to pay, so it builds confidence. So if something goes wrong, then you know that an investor will get paid. So that investor has more confidence to try out these new emerging blue sectors. And so through Nautilus, we think we can build the confidence, build the system. And then once investors have had good experiences in the blue space, we hope that we can scale investments from there.
I love the systematic approach that you're taking with ORRAA, trying to identify where there are gaps and needs and try to address them with different products. And so I want to acknowledge that and thank you for that great work. I want to take us a bit further, though, to some of the underlying drivers here, because as we know in with nature conservation and the blue economy and everything, we're often working against some of the more powerful interests in the world, the fishing industry. We know that there's harmful fishing subsidies, a lot of coastal development going on that's not as thoughtful about some of the natural environment as it could be, even though coral reefs and mangroves provide incredible coastal protection value. And I'm just, wondering what your thoughts are. And you talked about systematic change. What are your thoughts about creating a kind of momentum where some of those the pressures that are making it hard to have sustainable fisheries, hard to have sustainable aquaculture, hard to assure integrated blue-green infrastructure is prioritized by governments and investors. What are some of the leverage points and opportunities for some real systematic change?
Yes, it's a bit of a carrot and stick approach, as I think it always will need to be. I think there's a couple of angles here. One is about making it material and known what impacts that actors, companies, governments are having on the coastal and ocean environment. And so that links back to Kim's question about how do we measure this? But it's more than that. It's about requiring um, governments and corporations to disclose what their impacts are on the ocean. And through that disclosure, then we have the information at hand um, to make better decisions. There's also, though, within that, an opportunity to find champions who are looking for championing a better future. We do have, through ORRAA, a really exciting initiative called Back Blue, where we partner with large corporations and financial institutions who do want to be the leaders for this change. And through our Back Blue partners, there's over 1 trillion of assets under management. So it's a lot of the big players in in the market, and they are signing up to Back Blue and giving their commitments, which are that they will follow sustainable blue economy investment priorities and screen their investments for impacts on the ocean. And so finding these champions, there's really an opportunity there to make change at scale. And what does that look like in a specific geography? So that's big talk on the global stage, but what would that look like if you were, say, a small island developing state in over in my side of the world, whether you're Australia, a big nation, or one of the Pacific Island neighbors? What does that actually look like in practice? I think what it looks like in practice is building the policy which says we are going to protect our coastal and ocean environment, and through those protections allow for sustainable use for parts of the system while doing fully highly protected marine areas for at least 30%. But through that, we can create systems where there can be sustainable development, there can be economic development, but following strict rules and only in, up to 70% of a marine area. And that balance, it's the balance which will allow our oceans to thrive. And then finding those corporations that want to be part of the change, helping them to find investment opportunities that are good from their bottom line and good for the planet. And there are nature based solutions, whether it's with seagrass restoration, mangrove restoration, coral reef protection, ecotourism, which needs a healthy marine protected area to thrive in order to bring in the tourist dollars. We do have examples of how we can have both. And another actor, which we haven't talked a lot about today, but is really vital in this space, is insurance. The insurance and reinsurance sector, they are so important for us to build the future that we all are striving for, because these insurers are feeling the risks and feeling the financial impact of climate change, of ocean change. It's hitting their bottom line right now. They have the data to know that through better protections and nature-based solutions, it will be more profitable for them. So there's an incentive there, but it's an issue of collective action. So ORRAA is working with many insurance partners to build collective action and make sure that we've got those incentives for the sector aligned with nature-based solutions and ocean health.
You're talking about the carrot and stick approach and mentioning, the importance of the policy and the policy framework and the regulatory framework, which is really critical for these actors then to be incentivized or to all have the same, often said, playing field, to make those decisions and take those actions. I'm curious. We talk a lot about innovative financing and blue finance and these new tools, new approaches. What do you see being needed in terms of regulatory and policy approaches and frameworks? Are those things that we already know, they already exist? We just need to get them in place, or are you seeing some new and innovative policy approaches that are needed or are happening to really help enable this finance to flow and make this systemic change?
Yeah, there's a couple of, I would say, low hanging fruit, some simple changes that governments can make now. One of those has to do with defining what is blue. a simple definition in government policy of what's blue. Now, to break that down a little bit, what I mean by that is we have global frameworks that tell us for each subsector of the blue economy what activities are hurting the ocean and which are helping the ocean, and defining some of that gray area in between. So we have the global frameworks. One of those, for example, is United Nations Sustainable Blue Economy Finance Principles, but there's others that have been put out by um, the IFC, the International Finance Corporation. There's many that we can look to. But individual governments can then create their own blue finance frameworks that tie to international best practice, but define for their country what is considered to be a sustainable and regenerative blue economy investment. That gives clarity, that gives confidence, so that when you have proposals for development, you know what your measuring stick is. The government can say, yes, this is sustainable, we'll let it happen, here's our permitting process, or no, we do not allow those activities in our waters. And having that framework in government policy just sets a line and makes it clear. Investors love that. And governments tend to like that clarity too. So it's, we believe, a really good start. And there's also a step further than that is defining a sustainable ocean plan. So many governments, over 196, I've lost count, there's probably more, have committed to the Global Biodiversity Framework's 30 by 30 commitment. But then it's about a government policy which says how you're going to achieve those commitments. And that can take the form of a sustainable ocean plan where you, for your entire ocean waters, lay out how you're going to achieve your 30% protection and what activities are allowed in that 70%. And that policy, putting that into place through marine spatial planning, stakeholder engagement, industry engagement. This is really vital to setting that groundwork so all stakeholders know this is how we're going to work together towards a sustainable ocean future. And Australia is an example of putting together a sustainable ocean plan, which we have seen a draft of, and it's in really good shape, and we hope will be released later this year to lay that framework. And now there's engagement with industry to say, here's how we can work together for a resilient and sustainable ocean economy future.
Yeah, it's amazing how essential it is for communication, getting everyone around the same table, even within different government ministries or areas. Just coming together to do this kind of longer term planning is essential because that communication often lacks in shorter term planning and when each ministry does their own budgeting and so to actually have a shared vision that involves the private sector, that involves communities, is really the only way to integrate the complex interactions that the ocean has. And ocean is, I don't think we really talked about it very much at the beginning, but it's compared to land where you can have private um, ranches and private land ownership more easily. Although, of course, there's all different kinds of land management and trusts, and but in the ocean, it's almost always shared resources in one form or another, and so that complicates governance. And so, yeah, having that shared vision and plan is super important. So it's going to be exciting to see how these things develop over time, and we're hoping to be involved in some of that. Um, so where do you see this all going, like in the future? What what would be success to you? What does it look like? And it could be maybe in the short term, next 3 years, 5 years, and then longer term. Where do we go from here?
Good question. I think for all of us working in this space, we have to maintain a sense of optimism and ambition about where we're going. It's easy to get sort of pulled down on the day to day when we see the real impacts of climate change all around us. And we can see with our own eyes that there's fewer fish and there's more bleaching in the coral reefs. And so we have to really think about what that future looks like and what's possible and how we're going to drive it forward. Um, for me, in this space around ocean economy, I would I really want to see that we're defining ocean economy to be around regenerative and sustainable activities. So there are some governments and places around the world where ocean accounts and ocean economies are measured about any activity that happens in the ocean and whether it hurts the ocean or not. And that might give us a false sense of, well, the ocean economy's grown, therefore we're doing the right thing. And that's not it at all. A successful blue economy, it's not about GDP or shipping volume. It's about healthy, resilient ecosystems. It's about empowered communities. It's about finance systems that reward that longer term view of ocean assets. Um, and we will have known we've succeeded when vulnerable communities and coastal nations actually have sovereignty over their marine resources and they have access to finance to implement co-management of their resources. When fishing is sustainable, when governments are not subsidizing harmful fishing, but instead subsidizing activities in the ocean that work towards our common resilient future, where shipping is happening, but it's using renewable energy. There's no more offshore oil and gas drilling, but we're focused on offshore marine renewable energy. And I think from where I sit, it's about building those systems and building ocean equity. So we've talked a little bit about some finance jargon. And in the blue finance world, we talk a little bit about debt and equity, and debt meaning taking out a loan and repaying it. And sometimes we work to create systems where bankers can give loans to blue projects. But increasingly, we need to be thinking about blue equity. And that has a couple of meaning to me. So in this future, I think we all have a shared stake in the activities in the ocean. And Dave, what you said is we share these resources. We all need a shared stake in what's happening next. And it shouldn't just be a couple of private actors that are benefiting economically, but it's about all of us and our assets in the future. It's even harder when we're looking at beyond national jurisdictions, so the high seas areas that we all share, but there's only a couple of actors out there that are economically profiting. So how do we build this shared ocean equity? And so I hope that through our collective effort, and that's through ORRAA and all of our members, um, through our ongoing collaborations that, Kim, Dave, you and I have been working together for years on this. It's this collaborative effort of building this high integrity, regenerative and sustainable blue economy, crossing sectors and working together. And so that at some point in 20, 50 years, we are recognizing through our actions and through our economic systems that the ocean is life and that a thriving ocean is at the heart of a climate secure planet.
I love that. And just a moment of thanks to Mother Ocean right here because she has created us and she keeps us alive and provides, half the air we breathe and just is a wonderful a partner and gift giver on the planet. So
Yeah, and I love your word, very inspiring, the work that you're doing, Melissa, and your perspective and this very, holistic yet very where the rubber meets the road perspective. And I think something that really is resonating with me from this conversation is, as we're moving forward, trying to build these different um, tools and mechanisms and finance and policy, we have to be working so hard to keep building trust, to keep building connections among one another, bring people together in the same room who normally maybe aren't together, who normally don't talk to each other, and building that trust. That we are mindful of that every step of the way to break down the barriers that we have that seem to be perhaps one of the biggest challenges of our time of kind of rebuilding trust and rebuilding dialogue and conversation. And so I think that is something that we all are, when we think of collective efforts, we need to trust one another and we need to be connected.
Melissa, any last thoughts before we say goodbye?
Oh, just want to say thank you. Thanks for the opportunity today and for the partnerships that we've had over the years. And one last thought I have is it is the trust and it's about the people. And I remember one of the projects we worked on together, which was the Pacific Ocean Finance Fellowship. And that was all about empowering individuals in the Pacific region to learn about blue finance and to grow their own professional understanding of it and empower them in a way that they are the future of blue finance in the Pacific region. And I'm happy to say that lots of those partners that the three of us worked on together are still working in this space and leading the charge. And it is about finding those champions. And I hope we can continue to do that together. And thanks for your partnership over the years.
Well, thank you.
Likewise, Melissa, thanks so much. And thanks so much for joining us for just a terrific conversation.
Thanks, Kim. Thanks, Dave.